What's going on, guys? Welcome to Everything Always. My name's Michael Roman, aka Allfires. Now, one of the things we used to talk about the most before we found out Toby and Andrew might have been coming back for Spider-Man No Way Home, and that's all we talked about for the last year and a half, was whether or not Robert Downey Jr. would ever reprise his role as Tony Stark or Iron Man in the MCU. Two huge upcoming projects that seem like the perfect place for either an AI version or a pre-recorded message. Both Armor Wars, where his buddy Rhodey will seemingly have to clean up Iron Man tech that's fallen into villains' hands around the world, or even the upcoming Ironheart series where Riri Williams will don a suit very similar to what Iron Man used to wear. And then before that, of course, Spider-Man Far From Home and No Way Home, where an easily pre-recorded message would have meant the world to Peter Parker in his time of peril. But now we're finding out from the writers over at Marvel officially what it's like to bring that up and what they said about Tony Stark returning as a storyline, plot device, or even just a cameo, and man, it might shock you. We're breaking down exactly what they said and meant by saying it's a non-starter and what this really means for the future of RDJ ever coming back in the MCU. But first, if you could consider hitting the subscribe button. We do daily Marvel content at the channel, and that's all we do. Everything from official Easter egg breakdowns, trailers, reviews, all the way to industry insider scoops, stories like today, and everything in between. So if that sort of thing's for you, hit the sub button, leave a comment down below. That will automatically enter you to win our next PS5 giveaway, which we're over halfway to. If you want, stick around to the end of the video. We'll get into all the giveaway stuff again there. Okay, so again, as I mentioned in the prologue, this is coming from one of the official writers over at Marvel on an episode of the Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith in an interview with Chris McKenna, one of the writers on Spider-Man No Way Home, referring to why Robert Downey Jr. wasn't one of the crazy cameos in that film when everybody else from the multiverse had showed up. This is what he had to say, quote, "Honestly, that's like a non-starter in the halls of Marvel, at least in our experience. They just don't really like constantly invoking. I mean, Tony cast such a large shadow even after Endgame, which we dealt with in Far From Home. But I think everyone felt like we can't just keep going to the Tony well. And I think that what we started realizing as we were writing this is that he wasn't the Uncle Ben. I mean, he was a father figure, there was a bond between them. In Endgame, he even has a photo of Peter, and it seems to be the final moral impetus to have him risk everything to try to reset the balance of the universe." And he goes on to say a lot more about Spider-Man No Way Home, and specifically in this story, how Aunt May really started supplanting the role that maybe people would have traditionally assumed was Iron Man. There was an opportunity to tell a part of Peter Parker's story, not in Iron Man's shadow. But more specifically, let's look at the noun he used to describe the idea of bringing Robert Downey Jr. back as Iron Man in this capacity. He called it a non-starter. Now remember, he's a writer for a living. Of course, his language is colorful, his lexicon, his diction, a little bit better than average. But non-starter specifically refers to, quote, an animal or person that fails to take part in the race. So when he says that idea is a non-starter, it means it's killed before it even starts. Like, it's not even in the running, it's not even part of the ideas. That's just a complete non-starter in the halls of Marvel, meaning that's the general sentiment over there. Don't even bring up RDJ coming back. Now, of course, we know why, because no one, including him or Marvel, would want to in any way cheapen his sacrifice he made to reset the universe. That's the whole part of his plot narrative, is laying down on the wire, making the sacrifice play. We've talked about that at length at the channel. But it is important to note that he made the qualifier as in his experience writing on Spider-Man. At least up until now, there's been no plans for that. The two projects that I mentioned, Armor Wars and Ironheart, will specifically focus on opportunities for a storyline to present a pre-recorded message. And I think a pre-recorded message alone, not an AI, does nothing to ruin his sacrifice if used tastefully as a plot device and a little reminder, a little capture of him in the past. I don't see why they couldn't do that, but that circumstance withstanding, it seems like they are totally on board on the no Tony Stark AI, which I totally agree with, and let me explain why. It's a very slippery slope. Once you can have him in a Jarvis capacity, then it doesn't make sense to not have him all the time. Then you've got one of your most popular and expensive actors only in a voiceover role, and while that's great for someone like him at his age, which means he can just stroll down to the local sound booth and do his voiceover, there are several things about this from Disney and Marvel standpoint that doesn't make any sense. You don't want one of your best, again, and most popular actors only doing voiceover work, and you certainly don't want to be paying Robert Downey Jr. quantities of money, which one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid actor in the MCU, for only voiceover work either. That doesn't make sense. Plus, there's the added on problem, which is what Chris McKenna pointed directly to, the shadow of Iron Man. His entire story was making the sacrifice play. He was one of the major antagonists and protagonists of the entire Infinity Saga. So leaving him in the past where he belongs is part of keeping the integrity of his sacrifice. If you can just bring him back, all of that seems to be cheapened and not worth the play. Most likely, where you could get away with this is 5, 6, 7 years down the road when we do get to a Secret Wars 2-part, and you bring him back as an AI in a crucial moment, probably for comic relief. So many things will have happened, will have matriculated in the MCU, so to speak, will have developed to a point where his showing up then, his cameo then, would be inconsequential, but it is still too fresh in the MCU. Again, only 3 years off his sacrifice in Endgame and 1 year off completely from the storyline. It is so important that the MCU has a chance to grow, mature, and that things of consequence take place without his print on them. So again, down the road in Secret Wars, when we're already facing off against Dr. Doom, when we've already had the multiversal war against Kang, then two things will have happened at that point, not to make Iron Man the shadow that he is right now. Those characters will have grown and developed, have backstories that aren't tied to him, meaning their entire existence, their purpose, where their narrative arcs are, won't have really anything to do with Iron Man showing up in a cameo. So his shadow will not be cast there. The second thing is, too many main things will have already happened in the MCU that no matter what battle he's a part of in that moment, won't be undoing everything else. Again, the more time that's between him showing up and when he made that sacrifice allows for it to breathe and not cheapen the sacrifice he made. But as always, I would love for you guys to respond down in the comments. I know some of you will disagree with me and want to see him back ASAP. I know some of you will wholeheartedly agree with me and say leave him out of it. Do not cheapen what he did for the MCU. And I am all ears on both sides. Let me know all your thoughts down below. Quickly, let's get into the giveaway stuff before I let you go. Okay, we're still giving away PS5s, and we're doing so now at every 20,000 subscribers all the way up to 1 million instead of 100,000. So much more frequently. We're already halfway to the next one. So if you want to be entered to win, or if you like the content here at the channel, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below, and it's the same for all the giveaways. That'll automatically enter you because it's truly random. More videos you comment on, better chance you have of winning. If you're still listening to me in the 7-minute, 15-second mark of this video, you're who I'm speaking to, because if you watch all my videos, as my data indicates, and you watch all of them, you've been rocking with me at the community for a while. I just realized I do this. I have watched hundreds of videos on channels and not subbed. I may be one of those channels for you. Just a friendly invite to hit the sub button. Like, I get it if you don't. I don't just sub to a lot of channels. I end up watching a lot, but I'm trying to hit 1 million. I am so close. And so if I've ever, been like a content creator for you, like if you watch my videos or if you're part of the community here, if you do the watch parties, whatever it is, if you hang out already, hit the sub button. It'll automatically enter you for the giveaways, and you're already watching the videos, so it's a no-brainer. But you sincerely be supporting me, and you don't have to spend $1 to do this. You just got to hit that button. That's all it takes. My name's Michael Roman. Thank you so much if you already have subbed. I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you. If you want to connect more, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at IamFires. You can also find me on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, Apple, iTunes, wherever you listen to original music under the name All Fires. Well, I sincerely appreciate you checking out my music. Thanks for checking this channel out. Stick around. We'll be posting again real soon.